Two hunters found a World War II tank buried in the Appalachian forest. When they followed its tracks deeper into the mountains, they discovered an entrance to something that was never supposed to be found, and the government would kill to keep it that way. The deer wasn't where it should have been. Marcus Webb had tracked the blood trail for half a mile through thick West Virginia forest, his breath fogging in the October cold. 20 years of hunting these mountains, and he knew when something was wrong. The blood pattern was right. His shot had been clean, but the trail led away from the valleys where wounded deer normally fled. Instead, it climbed toward Copperhead Ridge, a section of the George Washington National Forest that locals avoided for reasons nobody talked about much anymore. His hunting partner, Tommy Briggs, caught up wheezing slightly. Marcus and Tommy had served together in Iraq, came home to the same small town and fell into the same routines. Work at the lumber mill, hunt season in fall, fish in summer, and try not to think too much about the things they'd seen overseas. Tommy looked at the ridge ahead, then back at Marcus. "You sure we want to go up there?" Stories about Copperhead Ridge were old as dirt. Moonshiner territory back in Prohibition. Government bought it in the 50s, closed off sections, put up no trespassing signs. Some folks said they'd done weapons testing. Others claimed it was nuclear waste storage. Teenagers dared each other to explore it, but nobody ever found anything except rusted fences and federal property warnings. Marcus checked his rifle, more habit than necessity. "I'm not leaving a wounded animal to suffer because of ghost stories. We find it, tag it, and get out before dark." They climbed. The blood trail stayed clear, droplets on fallen leaves, smears on tree bark. But something about the pattern bothered Marcus. The deer should have weakened by now, should have bedded down. Instead, the trail moved with purpose, like the animal had a destination in mind. "Weird," Tommy muttered, kneeling beside a large blood pool. It stopped here, just stopped, then started again 10 feet over, like it jumped. Marcus studied the gap. No deer jumped that far while bleeding out. He searched the area and found something that made his skin prickle. Drag marks in the soft earth. Something heavy had been pulled through here, recently enough that rain hadn't erased it. He followed the marks away from the blood trail, and 30 yards later, he stopped dead. "Tommy, get over here." What Tommy saw made him reach for his sidearm reflexively, though he'd left it in the truck like always. Partially buried under decades of forest debris, covered in moss and saplings, was a tank. Not a training hulk or a memorial piece. A real tank. Tread still intact, gun barrel pointing toward the sky like a warning. The markings were faded but visible. A white star in a circle, U.S. Army, and numbers Marcus couldn't quite read. Holy hell. Tommy's voice was barely a whisper. "That's a Sherman. M4 Sherman. World War II vintage." Marcus had seen them in museums, in old war footage his grandfather loved. Never buried in a West Virginia forest like some kind of secret. How did this get here? Tommy circled it carefully, not touching. Shermans were death traps in the war. Thin armor, prone to catching fire. Called them Ronsons because they lit up like cigarette lighters. But this one wasn't burned out. It was intact, preserved somehow beneath the forest floor. Marcus noticed something else. The ground around the tank showed recent disturbance. Not just from weather or animals. Someone had been digging here. And recently, he found a depression where dirt had been removed, then partially filled back in. Found the scrape marks of a shovel blade. Someone's been excavating this thing. Tommy's head snapped up. "We should go. Right now." But Marcus was already moving around the tank's far side where the trees thinned slightly. What he saw there made his breath catch. Tracks. Not the tank's tracks, those were buried and grown over. These were fresh impressions in the soft ground, leading away from the tank. Deep, parallel grooves exactly the width of tank treads. Impossible tracks because this tank hadn't moved in 70 years. But something with the same dimensions had been through here recently. The tracks led up the ridge, toward an area Marcus didn't recognize despite 2 decades of hunting these mountains. "Tommy, you seeing this?" Tommy was seeing it. Tommy was also backing toward the direction they'd come from. "Marcus, I'm serious. We need to leave. Whatever's up there, whoever's making those tracks, that's federal land. That's trouble we don't need." Marcus knew Tommy was right. Knew that smart money said turn around, hike down, forget what they'd seen. But 20 years in these mountains and he'd never seen this section. The tracks were fresh, maybe hours old. And the deer, he realized suddenly, the deer blood trail had intersected with these tracks. That's why it had jumped. Something had taken it. something that left tread marks. I'm following these tracks. Marcus said it with finality. You can head back if you want. I won't think less of you. Tommy stared at him for a long moment. Then he sighed with the resignation of a man who knew his friend too well. You're going to get us killed one day. Just haven't managed it yet. They followed the tracks up Copperhead Ridge. The trail was clear, unmistakable. Whatever had made these impressions was heavy enough to compact the earth, wide enough to push through the underbrush. The forest here was old growth, trees that had seen 2 centuries, but sections showed recent damage, broken branches, torn vegetation. Something large had passed through, and recently, after 20 minutes of climbing, they reached a clearing Marcus had never seen on any map. The space was roughly circular, maybe 50 yards across, unnaturally flat. No trees grew in the center, just low scrub and exposed rock. And in the middle of the clearing, partially concealed by camouflage netting that looked new, was another Sherman tank. This one was operational. Engine warm, Marcus realized, pressing his hand near the exhaust. He could feel residual heat. Someone had driven this thing up here recently. But why? Who had working Sherman tanks in West Virginia in 2024? Tommy was examining the ground near the tree line. Marcus, you need to see this. He'd found a path too regular to be natural. It led from the clearing toward the ridge face where the mountain rose sheer and imposing. They followed it, weapons ready now, every instinct screaming that they'd stumbled onto something dangerous. The path ended at the mountain face, or appeared to. Marcus almost walked past it, would have if Tommy hadn't grabbed his arm. There, in the rock face, barely visible beneath decades of natural camouflage, was a door. Military-grade steel, set into the mountain itself. The kind of door that kept out more than weather. The kind that protected secrets. The entrance was partially open, just enough for a person to slip through. The tank tracks led right up to it, then disappeared into darkness beyond. We're not going in there. Tommy's voice was firm. That's not a suggestion, Marcus, we're not going in. Marcus stared into the darkness beyond that door, thought about the buried Sherman, about working tanks in a supposedly restricted forest, about government secrets and the kind of things that got people killed for knowing too much. Then he thought about his grandfather, who'd fought in World War II, who'd come home with nightmares he never explained and a silver star he never displayed, who'd told Marcus once, drunk and melancholy, that the worst thing about war wasn't what you did, it was what you knew and couldn't tell. 5 minutes. Marcus pulled out his phone, turned on the flashlight. 5 minutes inside. We look, we document, we leave. If it's just storage or old equipment, we forget about it. If it's something else, we report it anonymously. Tommy looked at him like he'd suggested invading Russia in winter. And if someone's inside, if whoever drove that tank is waiting, then we'll know to run. Marcus slipped through the door before Tommy could argue further. After a moment and a string of creative cursing, Tommy followed. The darkness beyond was absolute. Marcus's phone light cut through it like a knife, revealing a tunnel carved from living rock. The walls were reinforced with steel beams, military construction from an era when things were built to last. The floor was smooth concrete, and in that concrete were the same parallel grooves. Tank tracks. Whatever they'd found, it was bigger than storage. This was an installation, a facility carved into the mountain and hidden for 80 years. They moved forward, Marcus leading, Tommy covering their backs. The tunnel ran straight for maybe 50 yards, then opened into something larger. A chamber. Marcus's phone light wasn't enough to illuminate it fully, but he could see enough. The space was massive, cathedral-sized, carved from solid rock and reinforced with steel. And lined up in neat rows like soldiers on parade were tanks. Dozens of them. Sherman tanks. Every one identical to the others. Everyone maintained operational, ready for deployment. But deployment where? And for what? The war ended 80 years ago. Tommy had stopped moving, just staring. His voice came out strangled. What the hell is this? Marcus swept his light across the chamber. The tanks were just the start. Against one wall were crates, military issue, stenciled with markings he recognized from his service. Ammunition, fuel, spare parts, all dated 1944 and 1945. All stored in conditions that kept them preserved and usable. This is a depot. Marcus's mind raced. A wartime storage facility. But why here? Why hidden? Why kept operational? He found a bulletin board near the chamber entrance. protected behind plexiglass. Posted on it were orders, yellowed with age but still readable. Operation Homestead, dated March 1945, classified top secret. The text was dense military bureaucracy, but certain phrases jumped out. Domestic defense contingency, enemy occupation scenario, continuity of resistance, and at the bottom, in stern capital letters, to be activated only in event of invasion of continental United States. Tommy read over his shoulder. They built this in case we lost the war, in case Germany or Japan invaded. This was Plan B. Keep fighting even if the government fell. Marcus thought about that, about how close the war had been, despite the history books making it seem inevitable, about how scared people must have been in 1945, scared enough to hide tanks in mountains, scared enough to plan for guerrilla warfare on American soil. But the war ended. We won. Why didn't they decommission this? That's the question, isn't it? A new voice, from the darkness behind them. Both men spun, Marcus's light catching a figure emerging from deeper in the chamber. An old man, maybe 90, wearing coveralls and carrying a wrench like he'd been doing maintenance. His eyes were sharp despite his age, military bearing obvious in his posture. Because, the old man continued calmly, some secrets are too important to let die just because the war ended. Marcus kept his rifle ready but not aimed. Who are you? The old man smiled slightly. Name's Robert Chen. Captain Robert Chen, U.S. Army, retired. Though I've been attached to this facility since 1968, so retirement is a relative term. He gestured around the chamber. Welcome to Site Tombstone, gentlemen. I'd ask how you found us, but I'm guessing you followed the retrieval unit. Retrieval unit? Tommy's voice was suspicious. The tank we saw, it collects materials from the perimeter. Deer, mostly. Sometimes hikers who get too close. Chen said it matter-of-factly, like discussing crop rotation. We can't have remains drawing attention. The forest takes care of most cleanup naturally, but we handle the exceptions. You killed people. Marcus's hand tightened on his rifle. The old man's expression didn't change. Define killed. We've deterred over 50 unauthorized incursions in the last 60 years. Most people we just scared off. A few, the ones who saw too much or wouldn't leave, they had accidents. Tragic, but necessary. This facility cannot be compromised. Marcus felt cold fury building. You're admitting to murder? Chen shrugged. I'm admitting to national security. There's a difference. This facility represents America's last line of defense against domestic catastrophe. We're the insurance policy nobody wants to use but everyone prays exists. The tanks, the weapons, the infrastructure, it all stays ready. Generation after generation of caretakers making sure that if the worst happens, resistance can continue. Even now? Even in 2024? What enemy are you preparing for? The old man's smile faded. The same one we always prepared for. Whoever wants to end America. Could be a foreign invasion like we feared in 45. Could be domestic collapse. Could be something we haven't imagined yet. The mission doesn't change. Stay hidden, stay ready. Preserve the capability to fight. Marcus lowered his rifle slightly. You're telling me there are more of these sites? Chen nodded. Across the country. Hidden in mountains, forests, deserts. Each one maintained by a small crew, each one unknown to the others. Compartmentalized. Secure. There's a network, gentlemen. Has been since World War II. And it's still operational because some threats never go away, they just change shape. Tommy had been quiet, processing. Now he spoke. But who funds this? Who gives the orders? The government doesn't even know you exist, does it? Chen's expression turned carefully neutral. The government that matters knows. The parts that plan for continuity. The shadow structures that ensure America survives even if the visible government falls. We receive supplies through channels that don't appear in budgets. We report to offices that don't officially exist. It's need to know, and most people don't need to know, until they stumble into a facility like trespassers. The threat was implicit. Marcus understood it immediately. So what happens to us? Do we have an accident too? Chen studied them both. That depends. You're both veterans. Iraq War, if I'm reading the signs right. You understand operational security. You understand why some things stay classified. The question is, can you walk away and forget what you saw? Or do you become a problem I have to solve? The silence in the chamber stretched like a wire pulled taut. Marcus met Chen's eyes, reading the calculation there. The old man wasn't bluffing. 60 years of guarding this secret had made him capable of things most people couldn't imagine. Tommy shifted beside Marcus, hand near his sidearm that wasn't there. The absurdity of the situation hit Marcus suddenly. They'd tracked a deer and found America's hidden history. Found a ghost from World War II still fighting a war that ended before Marcus was born. We're not a problem. Marcus said it carefully. We're hunters who got lost. We'll go back down the mountain and forget this clearing exists. Chen tilted his head slightly, considering. You say that now, but you've seen too much. The tanks, the facility, me. You could tell anyone. Post photos online. Call the media. Suddenly Site Tombstone is compromised and 80 years of preparation is wasted. I can't allow that. What if we gave you our word? Tommy's voice was steady despite the situation. We're veterans. We know about classified operations. We know when to keep our mouths shut. Chen laughed, but without humor. I've heard that before. From the hiker in 1987 who swore secrecy, then wrote a book about government conspiracies. From the nature photographer in 2003 who tried to sell his story to National Geographic. From the geology students in 2011 who thought they'd found a story that would make their careers. They all gave their word. They all became problems. Marcus felt his stomach turn cold. What happened to them? Chen's expression was flat, emotionless. They had accidents. The hiker fell off a cliff 3 months later. The photographer's house fire was ruled electrical. The student's car went off a mountain road in bad weather. Tragic, random, unconnected. Except they weren't random at all. You're a murderer. Tommy's voice shook with anger. Chen met his gaze without flinching. I'm a soldier following orders. Orders that predate your birth and will continue after your death. This facility represents something bigger than individual lives. It represents national survival. And if protecting that requires difficult choices, I make them. He gestured around the chamber. This isn't about me. It's about ensuring America has a fighting chance if the worst happens. Sometimes good people have to do terrible things for the right reasons. Marcus thought about Afghanistan and Iraq. About decisions made in split seconds that haunted you for years. About the difference between soldiers and murderers, and how thin that line became under pressure. He'd killed people overseas. People who'd threatened his unit, his mission, his country. At the time it had seemed clear, necessary. Later, in the quiet moments, he'd wondered. Chen was looking at him, reading his thoughts somehow. You understand. I can see it. You've made hard choices. You know the weight of them. That doesn't make murder right. Marcus's voice was hard. Those people you killed weren't enemy combatants. They were Americans who stumbled onto something they didn't understand. They deserved protection, not execution. Chen's jaw tightened. They deserve the security this facility provides. The same security you've enjoyed your whole life without knowing it existed. You think America survived this long on luck? On good intentions? We survived because people like me made sacrifices people like you never knew about. That's the cost of freedom. Someone has to pay it. This is insane. Tommy took a step back toward the tunnel. We're leaving. Right now. You can't stop both of us. Chen didn't move, but something in his posture changed. Became more alert. I don't have to stop both of you, just slow you down long enough for the others to arrive. Others? Marcus felt new fear spike. How many people maintain this facility? Chen smiled slightly. Enough. We work in shifts. I'm usually alone during the day, but the evening crew will be here within the hour. They're younger than me. Faster. Better equipped. You won't make it off this mountain if they decide you're a threat. It's a standoff. Marcus recognized it from combat. Both sides armed with leverage, neither wanting to escalate. But standoffs ended, usually badly. He needed to change the dynamic, find an angle Chen hadn't considered. What if we helped you instead of becoming a problem? Chen's eyebrows rose. Helped how? Marcus thought fast. You said the facility needs maintenance, that you work in shifts. That implies you're understaffed. You could use people with military training who understand operational security. People who'd have reason to keep this secret because they're part of it. Tommy stared at him like he'd gone insane. Marcus, what are you doing? Buying us time. Marcus didn't take his eyes off Chen, and maybe finding a better solution than more accidents. Chen studied him for a long moment. You're proposing I recruit you? 2 civilians who wandered in by accident? That's not how this works. Why not? Marcus pressed the point. Your caretakers are aging. You admitted you're 90. Your evening crew, how old are they? 70? 80? This operation needs younger blood eventually. People who can physically do the work. We're veterans with security clearances, or we had them. We live locally. We already know the secret. Use us instead of killing us. It was desperation more than strategy. But Marcus saw Chen hesitate, saw the calculation shift. The old man was thinking about it. About logistics and succession planning and the reality that Site Tombstone couldn't run on 90-year-old caretakers forever. Finally, Chen spoke. I'd have to verify your backgrounds. Confirm your service records, check for any red flags. Then you'd undergo a probationary period. Supervised, restricted access. If you proved trustworthy, you might move to full caretaker status. The whole process takes years. And if at any point you become a liability, the same resolution applies. Years of maintaining a secret facility. Years of lying to everyone they knew. Years of becoming what Chen was. A guardian of hidden history. Marcus felt the weight of what he was proposing. But the alternative was dying on this mountain. Another tragic accident. At least this bought time. Time to think, to plan, to find a way out that didn't end with their names added to Site Tombstone's list of problems solved. Okay, we'll do it. Tommy grabbed his arm. Marcus, we can't. This is crazy. We'd be accomplices to murder, to a conspiracy that's been running since World War II. We'd be traitors. Marcus met his friend's eyes. Or we'd be patriots protecting something important. I don't know yet, but I know I want to survive long enough to figure it out. You with me? Tommy looked between Marcus and Chen, trapped by impossible choices. Finally, he nodded, the reluctant agreement of a man following his battle buddy into hell one more time. Fine. But if this goes bad, I'm haunting you in the afterlife. Chen pulled a radio from his belt. Control, this is Tombstone Actual. 2 civilians encountered at primary site. Status is contained. Initiating recruitment protocol. Acknowledge. The radio crackled. Acknowledged, Tombstone Actual. Stand by for verification team. ETA 20 minutes. Chen clipped the radio back. The verification team will process your intake. Backgrounds, psych eval, medical screening. You'll be held here during the assessment. Could be days, could be weeks. I suggest you both get comfortable. Marcus and Tommy exchanged glances. They'd gone from hunters to prisoners in the span of an hour. But they were alive. That was something. Chen gestured deeper into the chamber. Come on. I'll show you the rest of Site Tombstone while we wait. Might as well understand what you've gotten yourselves into. They followed him through the tank depot into another tunnel. This one led to more chambers, each revealing new layers of the facility. One room held communications equipment, ancient radio gear from the 40s alongside modern computers. Another contained sleeping quarters, Spartan bunks for 12 people. A third was a medical bay supplied with everything from World War II-era surgical tools to current medications. It's a city. Tommy's voice held unwilling admiration. A whole city inside the mountain. Chen nodded. Self-sufficient for 6 months if we seal the entrances. We've got water from an underground spring, air circulation from natural cave systems, power from generators with fuel reserves. There's even a small hydroponic garden for fresh vegetables. Everything needed to hide an insurgent force and keep it operational. Marcus studied the layout, the military precision of it. How many people know this exists? Outside the caretakers? Chen was quiet for a moment. That's complicated. The original planners are all dead. The military unit that built it was disbanded in 1947, its records classified and scattered. The government office that maintained oversight was dissolved in the 60s, its files buried in some archive nobody remembers. Now, maybe 12 people in the entire federal structure know about the Continental Defense Network, and most of them only know it exists, not where or how many sites. Continental Defense Network. Marcus filed that away. So there are others. How many? Chen smiled slightly. Need to know. And you don't need to know. Yet. What Marcus did know was that he and Tommy had stumbled into something vast, something that had been running in secret for 8 decades, maintained by true believers like Chen who devoted their lives to a mission nobody remembered. It was impressive and terrifying in equal measure. They reached a final chamber, smaller than the others. This one held something different. A wall covered in photographs, hundreds of them. Black and white images from the 40s, color photos from later decades. All showing the same thing. Men and women in military uniforms or civilian clothes, standing in front of tanks or tunnel entrances, names and dates written beneath each photo. The caretakers. Chen's voice held reverence. Every person who's served at Site Tombstone since 1945. The original crew who built it. The veterans who maintained it during the Cold War. The current team who keep it ready today. When you die, your photo goes up here. Your service recorded for a history that can never be written. Marcus looked at the faces. Young men in their 20s, middle-aged women with determined expressions, elderly caretakers like Chen, still serving decades past retirement. All of them had kept the secret. All of them had died without recognition, without thanks, their contributions invisible to the country they'd protected. It was tragic and noble and deeply wrong all at once. One photo caught his attention. A young Asian man in Army uniform, 1968 written below. He looked familiar. That's you. Chen nodded. Fresh from Vietnam, I thought I'd done my service, earned my peace. Then I got recruited into this. 56 years I've been here, gentlemen. 56 years maintaining hardware for a war that never came. Sometimes I wonder if we're guards or prisoners. If this facility protects America, or if it's just a tomb where old soldiers go to die slowly. The honesty surprised Marcus. You regret it? Chen looked at the photographs, at decades of faces, every day, and not at all. I've kept something important alive, given my life meaning beyond myself. That counts for something even if nobody knows. He turned to face them. That's what you'd be choosing. A life of hidden service. No recognition, no thanks. Just the knowledge that you're maintaining America's last line of defense. Still want in? Before Marcus could answer, the radio crackled. Tombstone actual. Verification team arriving. Secure the subjects. Chen's demeanor shifted, became more formal. Time's up. The verification team will determine your fate now. I suggest you cooperate fully. They're less understanding than I am. Two men emerged from the tunnel. Younger than Chen, but still old, maybe 60s. Both carried sidearms openly. Both moved with the efficiency of lifelong military. One of them, a black man with iron-gray hair, studied Marcus and Tommy with hard eyes. These the intruders? Chen nodded. Marcus Webb and Tommy Briggs. Both local, both veterans. Iraq War. I've initiated recruitment protocol. The second man, white with a scar across his jaw, frowned. Bob, you're getting soft. Protocol says intruders get dealt with permanently. Chen's expression hardened. Protocol also says I have discretion in special circumstances. These men have useful skills and local knowledge. We're understaffed. They could be assets. The scarred man didn't look convinced. Or they could be liabilities. Plants sent by someone who knows about us. Could be media. Could be foreign intelligence. Could be federal agents testing our security. We don't take chances. Marcus felt the situation deteriorating. We're not agents or media. We're hunters who got lost. That's all. The black man laughed without humor. Lost hunters who tracked a deer for a mile uphill, found a buried Sherman, followed tank tracks to a concealed entrance, and entered a classified facility? That's not lost. That's enemy reconnaissance. Tommy's patience snapped. We're not your enemies, we're Americans, veterans, we bled for this country same as you. Whatever you think you're protecting here, we're not a threat to it. The scarred man pulled his sidearm. That's not your call to make. Chen stepped between them. Stand down, Ray. I outrank you and I'm invoking command authority. These men get processed according to protocol. Verification, evaluation, then a decision. Not summary execution in a tank depot. Ray's expression was mutinous. Bob, you're 90 years old. Your command authority expired with your commission 50 years ago. We run this facility on consensus now. And I'm consensus says these two know too much. The situation balanced on a knife edge. Marcus could see it in the body language, the positioning. Ray and his partner, whose name Marcus didn't know, were ready to shoot. Chen was protecting them but couldn't actually stop two armed men. Tommy was coiled beside him, ready to fight knowing they'd lose. This was how people died in secret places. Quick decisions, buried bodies, forgotten names. Marcus's mind raced through options. All bad. Run and get shot in the back. Fight and get shot in the front. Surrender and maybe get shot anyway. Then he remembered something Chen had said. This operation reports to shadow structures, offices that don't officially exist, which meant someone above Chen's level, someone with actual authority. Who's in command of Site Tombstone? Marcus directed the question at Chen but watched Ray's reaction. If this facility has a command structure, someone makes final decisions. Who is it? The question created a pause. Ray and his partner exchanged glances. Chen's expression was carefully neutral. That's need-to-know information. But you said we're being recruited. Marcus pressed the point. Recruited into what? A group that murders trespassers on one man's authority? Or an actual military operation with rules and oversight? Because if it's the latter, I want to speak to whoever's in charge before anyone makes permanent decisions about us. It was a gamble. But Marcus had learned in the army that chains of command mattered. That challenging authority sometimes bought time, created space for cooler heads. Ray's jaw clenched. You don't make demands here. You're prisoners, not recruits. Actually, Chen's voice was thoughtful. He has a point. Recruitment protocol requires the site commander's approval. I can't make that decision unilaterally. Neither can you, Ray. We need to contact Major Kellerman. Major Kellerman. Marcus filed the name away. So there is someone above you. Chen nodded slowly. The Continental Defense Network has regional commanders. Major Kellerman oversees 12 sites across Appalachia. She reviews all recruitment decisions and major security incidents. This qualifies as both. Ray looked unhappy. Calling the major means admitting we had a security breach. That goes in reports. That affects our operational rating. Better than having a murder investigation if these two disappear and someone starts asking questions. Chen's voice had steel underneath. They're local veterans, Ray. People know them. If they vanish, there will be searches. Questions. Exactly the attention we can't afford. Call the major. After a tense moment, Ray holstered his sidearm. Fine. But they stay secured until she arrives. He pulled plastic zip ties from his pocket. Hands behind your backs, both of you. Marcus complied, feeling the plastic bite into his wrists. Tommy did the same, shooting Marcus a look that said this had better work. They were marched to the sleeping quarters and secured to bunks with additional ties around their ankles. Ray's partner, who still hadn't spoken, stood guard while Ray and Chen went to make the call. Hours passed. The guard sat impassive, weapon ready. Marcus tested his bonds carefully, found them professional tight. No escape that way. Tommy whispered low enough only Marcus could hear. You got a plan? Or are we just delaying the inevitable? Working on it. Marcus studied their guard. The man was older, maybe 70, but alert. Military bearing, probably special forces in his younger days. The kind of man who'd spent decades in shadows, doing things that never made the news. Talking to him might provide intel, might also get them gagged. Marcus decided it was worth the risk. You serve here long? The guard's eyes flicked to him, but he didn't respond. Marcus tried again. I'm guessing decades. You don't get guard duty at a place like this without proving yourself. Still nothing. Tommy joined in. We're not your enemies. We're veterans, same as you. Iraq, 2007 and 2009. Combat engineers. We know about classified operations. About missions that don't exist officially. We understand what you're protecting. Finally, the guard spoke. Voice rough from disuse. You don't understand anything. This isn't about protecting missions. It's about protecting America itself. The core of what this country means. His eyes held true believer intensity. You stumbled into something sacred. Something that's kept this nation free for 80 years. Whether you live or die depends on whether you can carry that burden. Marcus leaned forward as much as his restraints allowed. Then tell us about it. Make us understand. Because right now all we see is old men guarding old tanks and killing people to hide it. If there's more to this, if it's as important as you say, we deserve to know before you decide to kill us. The guard studied them both for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the chamber entrance, checking that they were alone. When he returned, his posture had changed slightly. Less guard, more teacher. You want to know what this is? Really know? Marcus and Tommy both nodded. The guard settled back into his chair. I was recruited in 1979, after Vietnam, after Watergate and the Church Committee and all the revelations about what the government had been doing. The country was tearing itself apart. Trust was gone, and I was young, angry, disillusioned, ready to walk away from service entirely. Then I met the man who ran Site Tombstone back then, Colonel Martin, Army Intelligence. He showed me this place, explained the mission, told me about the Continental Defense Network and why it existed. And for the first time since coming home, I felt something besides anger. I felt purpose. Because the network isn't about politics or administrations. It's about something deeper. Continuity. The guard's voice took on a lecturer's cadence. Every civilization in history has fallen. Every empire has crumbled. Rome, Britain, all of them. They got complacent, forgot to maintain their defenses, assumed peace was permanent. And when the crisis came, they had nothing held in reserve. The network ensures America doesn't make that mistake. Tommy frowned. But the war ended. The crisis passed. The guard shook his head. One crisis passed. Others came. The Cold War. Nuclear brinksmanship. Terrorism. Each generation faces its own existential threat. The network adapts. What started as defense against foreign invasion became defense against nuclear attack, then against domestic collapse, now against threats we can't even name yet. But the mission stays the same. Maintain the capability to fight and win, even if everything else fails. Marcus thought about that. About insurance policies and worst-case planning. About the difference between paranoia and preparedness. It made a kind of sense, the logic of it. But the cost seemed unconscionable. And the people you've killed to keep this secret? Where do they fit in that noble mission? The guard's expression darkened. Collateral damage. Every war has it. We're fighting a Cold War against America's potential destruction. The people who stumbled onto our sites, who threatened to expose us, they were casualties in that war. Regrettable, but necessary. You talk about them like they were enemy combatants. Tommy's voice was tight with anger. They were Americans, civilians, people who had no idea they'd stumbled into a classified site. You murdered them to protect a secret most people don't even know exists. The guard leaned forward. And because of those deaths, millions of other Americans sleep safely. Because the network stayed hidden, stayed operational, stayed ready. That's the trade. A few lives for national survival. It's ugly, but all effective defense is ugly. Before Marcus could respond, voices echoed from the tunnel. Chen appeared with Ray and another person. A woman, maybe 60, in crisp, military fatigues. She carried herself with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Her eyes swept the room, cataloging everything in seconds. Major Kellerman. The guard stood immediately, almost snapping to attention. "Ma'am." The major nodded to him, then focused on Marcus and Tommy. "So you're the hunters who found Site Tombstone." She pulled a folding chair over and sat, studying them like specimens. "I've read your service records, both honorably discharged, both with security clearances during your active duty, both clean backgrounds." She tapped her tablet. "No criminal history, no suspicious associations, no red flags. On paper, you look like viable recruits." Tommy shifted in his restraints. "We don't want to be recruits. We want to go home and forget this place exists." Major Kellerman smiled slightly. "That's not an option anymore. You've seen too much. The Continental Defense Network's existence is compartmented at the highest levels. Fewer than 20 people in the entire government know about us. We stay effective by staying hidden. Your knowledge threatens that. So you have 3 choices." She held up fingers, counting them off. 1. You join us. Become caretakers like Chen and Ray. Spend the rest of your lives maintaining this facility and keeping the secret. 2. You refuse, in which case, you become a security risk that must be neutralized. 3. You try something stupid like escaping or fighting, and you get neutralized faster. Those are your only options. Marcus met her eyes. "What about option 4? Where we convince you this whole operation is wrong, that killing Americans to hide Cold War paranoia is insane, that maybe 80-year-old secrets should finally see daylight?" The major's expression didn't change. "That's not an option because you're wrong. This isn't paranoia. It's prudence. Do you know what would happen if Site Tombstone became public knowledge? If people learned the government had been hiding military installations and killing to protect them?" She leaned forward. "Congressional investigations, media frenzy, criminal prosecutions. The entire Continental Defense Network would be exposed and shut down. 47 sites across the country, each one containing resources for resistance and continuity. All of it would be lost. And then 10 or 20 years from now, when the next major crisis hits, when America faces an enemy we can't predict, we'll have nothing held in reserve. No backup plan, no insurance policy. That's why the secret matters. Not to protect me or Chen or anyone currently alive. To protect the Americans who'll need us in the future." It was a seductive argument. Marcus could see the logic, understand the fear driving it. But logic built on bodies was still murder. You're asking us to become accomplices, to help maintain a system that's killed innocent people. Tommy's voice was harsh. We can't do that. Won't do that. Major Kellerman stood. Then you've chosen option 2. Ray, take them to the processing area. They'll be listed as hunting accidents. Bodies found at the base of Copperhead Ridge. Tragic fall. Nobody will question it. Wait. Marcus's mind raced desperately. You said you've read our service records. Then you know we're not the kind of men who back down from hard truths. We didn't serve in Iraq to come home and roll over when threatened. The major paused. Your point? My point is you're making the same mistake every tyrant makes, thinking you can control information through violence. But you can't. Tommy and I aren't the first to find this place, and we won't be the last. Technology improves. Satellites get better resolution. Hikers carry GPS trackers. Eventually someone will find Site Tombstone with evidence you can't disappear. When that happens, your secret dies anyway. But if you kill us, it dies alongside proof that you're murderers. The major studied him carefully. You're proposing something. Marcus took a breath, formulating the argument as he spoke. I'm proposing transparency. Limited, controlled transparency. You bring us in, not as caretakers but as test cases. Prove that the network can evolve, that you can trust Americans with difficult truths without losing operational security. We sign NDAs, accept monitoring, whatever safeguards you need. But we get to go home, live our lives, and if we can keep the secret voluntarily, that proves you don't need to kill to maintain it. Ray laughed harshly. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You're asking us to trust you based on promises. Chen looked thoughtful, though. It's not entirely without merit. The network was built on the assumption that secrecy required isolation and elimination of threats. But we've never tested whether informed consent might work, whether Americans, properly motivated and monitored, could voluntarily protect national security secrets. Tommy stared at Marcus like he'd grown a second head. You're seriously negotiating to become their experiment? Better than being their victim. Marcus kept his focus on Major Kellerman. She was the decision-maker, the one whose judgment would determine if they lived or died. Ma'am, you're military. You understand that tactics have to evolve. What worked in 1945 doesn't work in 2024. The world has changed. The network needs to change with it, or it will fail anyway. Use us to test a new model. Monitored disclosure, voluntary silence. If it works, you found a way forward. If it fails, you lose nothing you weren't already planning to lose by killing us. The major was silent for a long moment. Then she pulled out her tablet, typing rapidly. I'm not authorized to approve this unilaterally. It would require approval from Network Command. But I'm intrigued enough to make the proposal. She looked at Chen. Bob, put them in secure holding. Full restrictions. No communication, no unsupervised movement. I'll take this up the chain and we'll see what comes back. Ray stepped forward, anger clear in his posture. Major, this is a mistake. We have protocols for exactly this situation. Deviating sets a dangerous precedent. Your objection is noted, Ray. But I'm the site commander and I make the call. Stand down. The tension was thick enough to cut. Ray looked like he wanted to argue further, but military discipline held. He and his partner cut Marcus and Tommy's ankle restraints, then marched them deeper into the facility. They ended up in what looked like a reinforced storage room. No windows, one heavy door, bare concrete walls. The guards shoved them inside and slammed the door. Lock mechanisms engaged with heavy finality. Tommy slumped against the wall. That was either brilliant or the stupidest thing you've ever done. Marcus tested the door, knowing it was futile. Bought us time, at least, time to think. Time for something to change. What's going to change? We're locked in a mountain facility run by paranoid cold warriors who think murdering civilians is patriotic. Even if this major goes along with your crazy plan, someone above her will shut it down. They've been doing this for 80 years, Marcus. They're not going to change because we asked nicely. Marcus knew Tommy was probably right, but giving up meant dying in this concrete box. He'd survived ambushes in Fallujah by refusing to accept impossible odds. This was no different. We focus on what we can control. Learn the facility layout, identify potential allies, look for weaknesses. If we get a chance to escape, we take it. Escape to where? They know our names, addresses, families. Even if we get off this mountain, they'll find us. Unless we expose them first. Marcus's mind was working through scenarios. If we get evidence, photos, Documentation. Get it to media or law enforcement before they can stop us. Make Site Tombstone public so they can't disappear us quietly. That's suicide. The network has been covering up for decades. You think we can outsmart them? Maybe not. But I'd rather die trying than live as their prisoner or accomplice. They spent hours in that room. No food, no water, no information about what was happening outside. Marcus used the time to think through everything he'd seen. The facility layout, the personnel, the security measures. Site Tombstone was formidable but not perfect. It had been built in an era before modern surveillance. Its security relied on isolation and secrecy, not technology. That was a potential vulnerability. Eventually the door opened. Chen stood there looking older and more tired than before. Come with me. Both of you. They followed him through tunnels Marcus was starting to mentally map. But instead of going to the command center where Major Kellerman had interviewed them, Chen led them to a small office carved into the rock. He closed the door and faced them. I'm going to tell you something that could get me killed. His voice was low. Urgent. The network command denied the Major's proposal. Said your plan was too risky, too unprecedented. The official decision is termination. You're scheduled for processing tomorrow morning. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Processing, meaning murder. Chen nodded grimly. Ray and his team will take you out as hunting accident victims. Major Kellerman tried to argue, but she was overruled. I'm sorry. I genuinely thought your idea had merit. Why are you telling us this? Tommy's voice was hollow. Why not just let it happen? Because I'm 90 years old and I've had 56 years to think about what we do here. Chen's eyes held something Marcus hadn't seen before. Doubt. Maybe guilt. I told myself it was necessary, that the mission justified the costs. But you asked a question earlier that's been eating at me. What happens when technology makes secrecy impossible? What happens when the network's methodology can't adapt? I don't have answers. But I know killing you won't stop those questions. So help us escape. Marcus kept his voice low. You know this facility better than anyone. Help us get out and we'll disappear. Go somewhere they can't find us. Chen shook his head. That won't work. The network has resources you can't imagine. They'd track you down eventually. The only way you survive is if Site Tombstone becomes public. If the secret gets exposed so thoroughly that killing you accomplishes nothing. How? We're locked in a mountain with no communications, no weapons, no way to contact the outside world. Chen pulled something from his pocket. A USB drive. On this is documentation. Photos of the facility, scans of historical records, personnel lists, everything needed to prove Site Tombstone exists. I've been compiling it for years, thinking maybe someday the truth should come out. I never had the courage to do anything with it. But you two, you're not part of this system. You could get it out. Marcus took the drive carefully. Why are you doing this? After decades of service, why turn against the network now? Chen smiled sadly. Because you reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That we're supposed to be protecting America, not our own secrecy. That the mission matters more than the institution. And because I'm old enough to see that the world has changed. The Cold War assumptions that built this place don't apply anymore. Either the network adapts or it becomes just another government secret that does more harm than good. He pulled out a map, spreading it on his desk. Tomorrow morning, 0600, Ray's team will take you through the north tunnel to the surface. It exits near the ridge face about a half-mile from where you entered. There will be 4 of them, all armed. Your window is small. What window? Tommy leaned over the map. Chen pointed. The tunnel has emergency lighting powered by the main generator. At 0545, I'll trigger a maintenance shutdown. 30 seconds of total darkness, that's your chance. Fight your way free, run, don't stop until you're off this mountain. Once you're clear, get that drive to media. National media, multiple outlets simultaneously. Make Site Tombstone too public to cover up. Marcus studied the map, calculating distances and odds. This is a suicide mission for you. When they realize you helped us, they'll kill you. Chen nodded calmly. I know, but I've lived longer than I deserved already. Done things I'll answer for eventually. If my last act is giving 2 good men a chance to expose a system that's outlived its purpose, that's a better end than I've earned. We can't ask you to sacrifice yourself for us. Yes, you can, because this isn't about you or me. It's about whether the Continental Defense Network serves America or just serves itself. For 80 years, we've told ourselves we're the good guys. Time to prove it or admit we've become what we were supposed to defend against. He rolled up the map. Get some rest. Tomorrow morning, when the lights go out, hit whoever's closest to you and run like hell. The darkness will only last 30 seconds. After that, you're on your own. Chen left, locking the door behind him. Marcus and Tommy sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Tommy spoke. That old man just signed his death warrant for us. We have to make it count. Marcus gripped the USB drive. We will. We get off this mountain, we expose everything. Site Tombstone, the Continental Defense Network, all of it. We make sure Chen's sacrifice means something. And if we don't make it, then at least we tried. That's better than dying without fighting back. Neither of them slept. The hours crawled past with agonizing slowness. Marcus spent the time mentally rehearsing the escape. 30 seconds of darkness to overpower 4 armed men and run into unfamiliar tunnels. The odds were terrible, but terrible odds were better than certain death. Tommy sat against the wall, eyes closed, breathing controlled, his combat calm, the same state he'd enter before missions in Iraq, preparing mind and body for violence. At 0530, boots echoed in the corridor. The door opened, and Ray stood there with 3 others, all armed with sidearms and tactical flashlights. Time to go. His voice was flat, professional. A man doing an unpleasant but necessary job. They bound Marcus and Tommy's hands in front this time, a small mercy that would make fighting slightly less impossible. The team formed up around them, 2 in front, 2 behind. Professional spacing, no easy targets. They moved through the facility in silence. Marcus memorized the route, counting turns and distances, the main tank depot, then a branch corridor he hadn't seen before. This tunnel was rougher, less finished. The emergency exit Chen had mentioned. The lighting here was sparse, bare bulbs every 20 feet casting pools of yellow and darkness between. Marcus checked his watch. 0542. 3 minutes until Chen's promised shutdown. If the old man followed through. If this wasn't an elaborate trap. If the darkness actually came. Ray glanced back at them. For what it's worth, nothing personal. Orders are orders. Tommy's voice was bitter. You're going to murder us and you want us to know it's not personal? That's supposed to make it better. Ray didn't respond. They walked in silence, boots echoing off stone. 0543. 2 minutes. Marcus's heart hammered. His hands flexed against the zip ties, testing. He'd need to break free fast, use the first seconds of darkness before the guards could react. The tunnel stretched ahead, rough-hewn rock walls closing in. No side passages, no cover. Just 70 yards of straight corridor to wherever this exit was. Poor tactical ground for an escape, but it was what they had. 0544. 1 minute. Marcus caught Tommy's eye, saw the same readiness there. They'd fought together before, knew each other's rhythms. When the moment came, they'd move as a unit. No hesitation, no doubt. Do or die. 0545. The lights went out. Total darkness. Absolute and disorienting. Marcus moved on instinct, dropping low and driving forward. His shoulder connected with something solid. A guard grunted, went down. Marcus's zip-tied hands found the man's face, drove fingers toward eyes. The guard screamed. Flashlight beams cut the darkness like searchlights. Marcus rolled away as bullets sparked off stone where he'd been. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Someone was shouting orders. Tommy yelled from somewhere to the left. Marcus scrambled forward on hands and knees, heading deeper into darkness. More shots. More shouting. Then the lights came back on. Marcus was 20 feet from the guards, Tommy another 10 feet past him. They'd made it farther than expected, but not far enough. Ray had blood streaming from his nose, but his gun was up and aimed. Stop or we shoot you where you stand. His voice was controlled despite the injury. This just went from clean accident to messy killing. Your choice, how this ends. Marcus raised his bound hands. Tommy did the same. They were exposed in the corridor with nowhere to run. Ray's team regrouped, weapons trained. One guard's face was torn up from Tommy's attack, another limped from where Marcus had taken him down. But all 4 were operational and furious. You just killed yourselves in Chen. Ray wiped blood from his face. That power failure wasn't maintenance. The old fool helped you. He's going to die slow for this. Rage built in Marcus's chest. Chen was a better man than you'll ever be. He understood that some secrets aren't worth keeping. Ray stepped forward, gun aimed at Marcus's head. "You don't know anything about—" The explosion cut him off. Somewhere behind them, deep in the facility, a massive detonation shook the tunnel. Dust rained from the ceiling. Emergency alarms shrieked. The guards spun toward the sound, momentarily distracted. Marcus didn't think. He charged Ray, driving his shoulder into the man's chest. They went down together, Ray's gun skittering across stone. Tommy was moving too, taking down the nearest guard with a tackle. The other two guards opened fire, but the tunnel was chaos now. Smoke billowing from the facility, alarms screaming, lights flickering. Marcus got his bound hands around Ray's throat, pressing his thumbs into the man's windpipe. Ray thrashed, trying to bring his knee up. Marcus held on, using his weight to pin the older man. Ray's face went purple. His struggles weakened, then stopped. Marcus held pressure for another 10 seconds, making sure. Then he grabbed Ray's knife, cut his zip ties free. Tommy had knocked out his guard and was wrestling with the other two. Marcus shot one of them, center mass, dropped him instantly. The last guard ran, disappeared into the smoke-filled tunnel toward the facility. Marcus didn't pursue. He cut Tommy's bonds, and they ran the other direction, toward the exit. The tunnel ended at a steel door, partially concealed by rock and vegetation. Marcus hit it at full speed, bounced off, locked from the inside. Tommy found the mechanism, a heavy deadbolt. They threw it open and burst into morning sunlight. The forest of Copperhead Ridge spread before them, beautiful and indifferent. Behind them, more explosions echoed from inside the mountain. "Chen," Tommy's voice was tight. "He didn't just create a distraction. He's destroying the facility." Marcus understood. Chen had known they might not make it out, known that even if they did, the network would hunt them forever. So he'd done the only thing that would truly help them. He was erasing Site Tombstone from existence. They ran down the mountain, crashing through underbrush. Marcus's lungs burned. His legs screamed, but he didn't slow. Behind them, a massive explosion shook the ground. Marcus looked back to see smoke pouring from several points on the ridge face. The mountain itself seemed to be collapsing inward, tunnels and chambers imploding. Chen had rigged the whole facility to self-destruct, taking himself, the evidence, and probably some of the remaining guards with it. They reached the bottom of Copperhead Ridge an hour later, covered in cuts and bruises. Tommy's truck was where they'd left it days ago, untouched. Marcus checked his pocket. The USB drive was still there, safe. They had the evidence, they had their lives, and they had a mission. Get somewhere public. Get online. Release everything before the network could stop them. Tommy drove while Marcus used his phone to research media contacts. Major outlets, investigative journalists, anyone with reach and credibility. He drafted an email with the drive's contents attached. Subject line: Continental Defense Network exposed. Secret military facilities and decades of cover-ups. Where are we going? Tommy's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Charleston. Marcus named the state capital 3 hours south. Federal building, TV stations, newspapers. We walk into every major media outlet and hand them copies. Do it simultaneously so they can't suppress it. Make Site Tombstone's destruction and Chen's sacrifice mean something. Tommy nodded. They drove in silence, each processing what had happened, what they'd seen, what they'd done. Marcus had killed Ray. Justified or not, that would sit with him. Tommy had fought and hurt people. They'd escaped a secret facility that was now buried rubble, and an old man had given his life to ensure the truth came out. The USB drive felt impossibly heavy in Marcus's pocket. It contained proof of 80 years of conspiracy, of a shadow network that had operated beyond democratic oversight, of Americans killed to protect that secret. The Continental Defense Network would try to stop this. They'd come after Marcus and Tommy with everything they had. But once the information was public, once journalists and investigators had it, killing them would accomplish nothing. The secret would already be out. They reached Charleston by noon. Tommy parked near the Federal Building and they split up, each taking copies of the drive. Marcus went to the Charleston Gazette-Mail's offices. He walked up to the front desk, exhausted and filthy from the mountain, and asked to speak to an investigative reporter. The receptionist looked dubious until Marcus said the words that changed her expression. "I have evidence of a secret government program that's been killing American citizens for 80 years. I have documentation, photos, and witness testimony, and I need you to publish it before they kill me too." That got him a meeting. Within an hour, Marcus was sitting with senior editors, laying out everything. Site Tombstone, the Continental Defense Network, Operation Homestead, the murders disguised as accidents. He showed them the files on Chen's drive, historical documents, facility photos, personnel lists, evidence that couldn't be dismissed as conspiracy theory. The editors listened with growing alarm. One of them, a woman named Patricia, who'd been in journalism for 40 years, studied the documents carefully. "This is either the biggest story of the decade or the most elaborate hoax I've ever seen. How do we verify it?" Marcus pulled out his phone. "I have coordinates for Site Tombstone, or what's left of it after this morning's explosions. Send people there. You'll find a collapsed facility, military hardware, evidence of recent occupation. You'll also probably find bodies, and then trace the ownership records for that land. Follow the paper trail. Contact former military personnel who might have known about the network. Cross-reference the list of suspicious deaths in that region over the past 60 years. The evidence is there if you look." Patricia nodded slowly. "We'll need time to verify and corroborate. A story this big we can't afford to get wrong." "How much time?" Marcus thought about Major Kellerman, about the network's resources and reach. "Hours. Maybe a day. Once they realize we escaped and the facility is destroyed, they'll mobilize everything to contain this. You need to publish before they can pressure you into killing the story." The editors exchanged glances. Patricia made a decision. "We'll fast-track it. Verification team leaves within the hour. Legal review simultaneous. If this checks out, we publish tomorrow morning, online and print." She looked at Marcus seriously. "You understand what you're doing? The government will come after you. There will be investigations, possible prosecution. Your life as you knew it is over." Marcus thought about Chen, about 300 test subjects, about Representative Holloway and all the others who died for asking questions. "I understand. Some truths are worth the cost." Tommy had similar success at the state TV station. By evening, multiple outlets were working the story, each approaching it from different angles. The coordination prevented any single point of failure. The network couldn't suppress all of them simultaneously. Marcus and Tommy checked into a cheap motel on the edge of Charleston, paying cash, using false names. They kept the TV on, monitoring news channels for any sign that the story was breaking. Around midnight, Tommy's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You've made a terrible mistake, Mr. Webb. The network has survived for 80 years because we adapt. We've already contained the Site Tombstone incident. Your evidence will be discredited. You and Mr. Briggs will be exposed as mentally unstable veterans suffering from PTSD. By next week, no one will believe anything you say. Enjoy your brief moment of relevance." Marcus read the text over Tommy's shoulder. "They're bluffing. They have to be." Tommy didn't look convinced. "What if they're not? What if they really can contain this? Then we fight harder." Marcus pulled out his laptop. "We don't wait for the newspapers. We put everything online ourselves. Social media, file-sharing sites everywhere. Make it go viral before they can shape the narrative." They spent the night uploading. Chen's files went to Reddit, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, every platform they could access. Within hours, the story was spreading. People were sharing, commenting, analyzing. Some called it a hoax. Others demanded investigation. The noise grew until it couldn't be ignored. By dawn, when the Charleston Gazette-Mail published their verified story, it hit a public already primed and curious. The headline was stark. "Secret military network exposed. Decades of hidden facilities and covered-up deaths." The reaction was explosive. Other outlets picked it up. Cable news ran segments. Congressional leaders demanded hearings. The Department of Defense issued a statement calling the allegations baseless, but promising a full investigation. The network's worst nightmare had come true. Site Tombstone was no longer a secret. Within a week, federal investigators descended on Copperhead Ridge. They found exactly what Marcus had described. Collapsed tunnels, military hardware, evidence of recent occupation. They found bodies too. Chen and several others buried in the rubble. The investigations expanded. Other suspected network sites were identified and searched. More facilities were found. More evidence recovered. The Continental Defense Network had existed for 80 years, operating in shadow, accountable to no one. Now it was being dragged into light. Marcus and Tommy testified before Congress, told their story under oath, answering questions for hours. Some legislators were outraged, demanding prosecutions. Others defended the network as necessary national security. The debate would continue for years. But the secret was out. That couldn't be taken back. Major Kellerman and Ray were among those arrested, charged with conspiracy, murder, obstruction of justice. The trials would be lengthy, complicated by classified information and national security claims. But there would be trials. There would be accountability. Not everyone was happy about it. Marcus received death threats regularly. Veterans groups were split, some calling him a hero for exposing corruption, others a traitor for revealing classified operations. He lost friends, lost job opportunities. His ex-wife tried to use the publicity to challenge custody arrangements, but he'd kept his daughter safe, and he'd honored Chen's sacrifice. 6 months after Site Tombstone's exposure, Marcus stood on Copperhead Ridge. The forest had reclaimed the area quickly, nature filling in the scars. But if you knew where to look, you could still see the collapsed entrance, still see evidence of what had been hidden here. Tommy joined him, hands in pockets against the autumn chill. Think it was worth it? All the cost, all the consequences? Marcus thought about that. About old men who'd devoted their lives to a mission nobody remembered. About the price of secrecy and the price of truth. About whether protection required darkness or could survive in light. Yeah, it was worth it. Because we proved something important, that ordinary people can hold power accountable, that institutions don't get to decide what truth the public can handle, that America is strong enough to face its own history, even the ugly parts. They stood in silence, watching the forest. Somewhere beneath their feet was Site Tombstone, a tomb now in truth, holding the bodies of true believers who died protecting a secret that couldn't be protected forever. Chen among them, a soldier to the end, but one who'd chosen truth over orders when it mattered most. Marcus pulled something from his pocket, the medallion from Chen's office given to caretakers upon completion of service. He'd taken it during their escape, not theft, but remembrance. The inscription read, "Vigilance through sacrifice." He laid it on the ground where the entrance had been, for Chen and all the others, for the ones who served in shadow and the ones who brought shadow into light. Then he and Tommy walked down the mountain, back toward the world that knew their names now, toward whatever came next. Behind them, the forest whispered over Site Tombstone's grave. The secret was buried, but the truth lived on. That was enough. The congressional hearings stretched through winter into spring. Marcus and Tommy testified 3 more times, each session bringing new revelations about the Continental Defense Network's scope. 47 sites across the country, from bunkers in Montana to coastal installations in Maine. Hundreds of personnel, some dating back to the original 1945 deployment. A shadow infrastructure that had consumed billions in black budget funding over 8 decades. The public reaction was mixed. Some saw it as vindication of every conspiracy theory about the deep state. Others viewed it as necessary preparedness for existential threats. Opinion polls showed the nation divided almost evenly. Did the network represent American resilience or American paranoia? Was it protection or oppression? The debate consumed media cycles. But beneath the political theater, real consequences unfolded. 27 network personnel were indicted on charges ranging from murder to falsifying federal records. Major Kellerman took a plea deal, agreeing to testify against higher-ranking officers in exchange for reduced charges. Ray fought the charges, claiming he was following lawful orders. His trial became a test case for how far national security could justify illegal acts. The Defense Department commissioned an internal review. The report, partially declassified after public pressure, confirmed Marcus and Tommy's core allegations. The Continental Defense Network had existed as an unacknowledged special access program since 1945. It had operated with minimal oversight, relying on need-to-know compartmentalization to avoid scrutiny. And yes, there had been security incidents resulting in civilian deaths. The report recommended dissolution of the network and prosecution of those involved in criminal acts. But it also noted that some network functions had evolved into legitimate emergency preparedness programs. The line between conspiracy and contingency planning was blurrier than anyone wanted to admit. Marcus returned to West Virginia to find his life fundamentally changed. He was famous now, recognized in grocery stores and gas stations. Some people wanted to shake his hand. Others spat at his feet, calling him a traitor who'd exposed critical national security assets. He couldn't return to his job at the lumber mill. The owner, a Vietnam veteran, had strong opinions about people who revealed classified information. Emma stayed with him, despite Linda's custody challenge. The judge ruled that while Marcus's actions were controversial, they didn't constitute endangerment. In fact, the judge noted, Marcus had acted to protect his daughter from a genuine threat. Linda had remarried anyway, and seemed content to leave Emma in West Virginia. Tommy fared worse. His family had deeper military connections. His father, a retired colonel, stopped speaking to him. His brothers, both active duty, told him he'd disgraced the family name. Tommy handled it with the same stoic determination he'd shown in combat, but Marcus could see the cost. They still hunted together, still shared beers on Friday nights, but something had changed. They'd crossed a line you couldn't uncross. Bill, the retired state trooper, remained supportive. He'd always suspected something wrong about Copperhead Ridge, he said. His father's tremors, his unexplained decline. The possibility that it connected to the network gave Bill a kind of closure. His father hadn't been weak or crazy. He'd been a victim of something larger and more sinister. 9 months after Site Tombstone's exposure, Marcus received a letter. It came through his lawyer, forwarded from a secure channel. The return address was a P.O. box in Virginia. Inside was a single page typed on old letterhead. Continental Defense Network Command. It read at the top. Below that, a message. Mr. Webb, you've accomplished something significant. You've exposed an operation that had outlived its original purpose. You've forced accountability where none existed. You've proven that American democracy can face uncomfortable truths about itself. For that, you have earned something rare. Our respect. The network as it existed is dissolved. Most sites have been decommissioned. Personnel have been reassigned or retired. The legal processes will continue and justice, whatever that means, will be served. But understand this. The need for contingency planning hasn't disappeared. America still faces existential threats. The methods may change, but the mission remains. We've learned from Site Tombstone's failure. Future operations will be more transparent, more accountable, better integrated with democratic oversight. Or perhaps they won't exist at all. Perhaps you're right that some Cold War assumptions need to die. Time will tell. You'll never know for certain if we've truly disbanded or simply gone deeper underground. That uncertainty is the price of the victory you've won. Live well, Mr. Webb. You've earned it. The letter was unsigned. Marcus showed it to Tommy over drinks at their usual bar. What do you think? Is it really over? Tommy studied the letter. Probably not. These kinds of systems don't die easy. They just adapt. But we've done what we could. Exposed it, forced change, made them afraid of public scrutiny. That's more than most people manage. Marcus folded the letter carefully. Think we did the right thing? Even with all the cost? Even knowing we'll never be sure if we actually stopped them? Tommy raised his beer. We did the right thing because there was no other choice. When you find a secret worth killing for, you've got a duty to expose it. Whether that fixes anything or just creates new problems, that's above our pay grade. They drank in silence. Outside, the West Virginia evening was cool and clear. Somewhere in these mountains, Site Tombstone lay buried. Chen's body was still there, never recovered, entombed in the facility he'd destroyed. The memorial service had been sparse. A few old caretakers who'd turned state's evidence, some military historians, Marcus and Tommy. No family. Chen had sacrificed them all decades ago for the mission. At the service, one of the former caretakers had spoken, said Chen had been troubled in his final years, questioning whether the deaths they'd caused were justified, wondering if the network had become what it had been created to prevent, a threat to American freedom. Marcus thought Chen had found his answer in the end, had chosen truth over loyalty, exposure over secrecy, had given two strangers the chance to finish what he couldn't. That was worth remembering. Emma adapted better than Marcus expected. She was 12 now, dealing with middle school and the complications of being the daughter of someone famous, or infamous. She handled questions from classmates with more grace than Marcus managed from adults. My dad did what he thought was right, she'd say. That's what matters. Sometimes Marcus wondered what lessons she was learning from all this, about when to follow rules and when to break them, about the cost of standing up to power, about whether individual actions could change systems or just get you crushed. He hoped she'd learn to be brave without being reckless, to question authority without becoming cynical, to fight for truth without sacrificing everything. But mostly, he hoped she'd just have a normal childhood. whatever normal meant anymore. A year after the exposure, Marcus was contacted by a documentary filmmaker. They wanted to tell the full story of Site Tombstone and the Continental Defense Network. Interviews, historical research, examination of declassified documents. Marcus agreed with conditions. Chen had to be portrayed fairly, not as a villain or a hero, but as a complicated man who'd served a flawed system and ultimately chose to break it. The filmmaker agreed. The documentary took 8 months to produce. It premiered at Sundance, won awards, sparked new debates. Marcus attended the premiere but left halfway through. Seeing it all dramatized, Chen's death and Ray's brutality and the desperate escape, it was too much. He went outside and found Tommy leaning against the building, smoking, despite having quit years ago. Couldn't watch either? Marcus joined him in the cold night air. Tommy shook his head. It's weird seeing actors play us, like it happened to someone else, like it was a movie instead of the worst week of our lives. They watched festival attendees stream past, heading to other screenings, other stories. None of those people understood. They'd never feel what it was like to be hunted, to kill someone in desperate self-defense, to carry the weight of exposing secrets that got people killed. But maybe that was okay. Maybe the point wasn't understanding. Maybe it was just knowing that systems could be corrupt, that individuals could resist, that truth mattered even when it was costly. The documentary did what Marcus and Tommy couldn't do alone. It kept the story alive. Within months, it had been streamed millions of times, shown in classrooms, debated on news programs. Site Tombstone became shorthand for government overreach and the dangers of unchecked secret operations. Legislation was introduced to reform special access programs, require more congressional oversight, establish protections for whistleblowers in the intelligence community. Some of it passed, some didn't. Politics moved slowly, and powerful interests resisted change. But the conversation had shifted. The Continental Defense Network was no longer hidden. Its existence, its methods, its body count were all part of the public record now. That couldn't be undone. 2 years after Copperhead Ridge, Marcus was offered a job. The offer came from an unexpected source: the Department of Defense's newly created Office of Special Access Program Oversight. They wanted someone with credibility, someone who understood both military operations and the dangers of excessive secrecy, someone the public would trust to ensure the reforms were real. The salary was substantial, the work would be meaningful, and Marcus would finally have a purpose beyond survivor. He almost said yes. Then he thought about Chen, about 56 years spent serving a system that had corrupted itself, about how service could become complicity if you weren't careful, about whether you could change institutions from inside or if they always changed you instead. He declined the offer, told them he appreciated it but needed to stay independent, needed to be outside the system so he could hold it accountable without conflicts of interest. They understood, or said they did. Instead, Marcus started something smaller, a foundation dedicated to helping whistleblowers navigate the legal and personal costs of exposing wrongdoing. He used the money from the documentary and a book deal he'd reluctantly signed. Tommy joined him, handling security and operational details. Bill contributed legal expertise through his connections in law enforcement. Together, they created a network of support for people who found themselves where Marcus and Tommy had been, holding dangerous truths and needing help to get them out safely. The Chen Foundation, they called it, named after the man who'd sacrificed everything to ensure the truth survived. The first case they handled was a VA nurse who'd discovered systematic fraud in patient care records. She'd tried reporting through official channels and been retaliated against. Marcus and Tommy helped her document everything, connected her with journalists, protected her from the worst of the backlash. The story broke, investigations followed, changes were implemented. It wasn't dramatic like Site Tombstone, but it mattered. More cases came. A defense contractor who found evidence of faulty armor being sold to the military, an FBI agent who witnessed civil rights violations in counterterrorism operations, a scientist who discovered falsified data in climate research funded by energy companies. Each one was different, but the pattern was the same. Someone had seen something wrong, tried to do something about it, and needed help surviving the consequences. The foundation grew. They hired staff, established protocols, built relationships with media outlets and legal firms. Within 3 years, they'd helped dozens of whistleblowers. contributed to multiple major investigations, and established themselves as a legitimate resource for anyone facing the impossible choice between silence and exposure. Emma was proud of her father's work. She volunteered at the Foundation's office after school, helping with administrative tasks, learning about the cases. Marcus worried sometimes that she was growing up too fast, learning too young about the darker aspects of power and corruption. But she seemed to take strength from it, seemed to understand that her father's choices, while costly, had mattered, that doing the right thing wasn't always easy, but was always worthwhile. On the 3rd anniversary of Site Tombstone's exposure, Marcus returned to Copperhead Ridge. The area was officially closed now, declared a hazardous site due to the unstable collapsed tunnels. But Marcus had gotten permission from the Forest Service for a private memorial. Tommy came with him. So did Bill. And surprisingly, 3 former network caretakers who testified against their superiors and received immunity in exchange for cooperation. They gathered near where the entrance had been. The forest had reclaimed most of the evidence, vegetation covering the scars. You'd never know a massive facility had been buried here unless you knew what to look for. One of the former caretakers, a woman named Sarah who'd served at a site in Oregon, spoke first. I served the network for 30 years. Believed I was protecting America. It took people like you, she looked at Marcus and Tommy, to show me I'd been protecting a lie instead. Chen knew before the rest of us. He tried to tell us in his quiet way that the mission had become corrupted. We didn't listen. He paid for our blindness. Another caretaker, an elderly black man named James, added his own reflection. The network started with good intentions, real fears about national survival. But intentions don't excuse outcomes. We killed people, covered up crimes, became the threat we thought we were defending against. That's the danger of secrecy. It lets you justify anything because nobody's watching. Marcus laid flowers where the entrance had been. Wildflowers he'd picked from the trail, the kind that grew throughout these mountains. For Chen, and for everyone else who died because of this place. The victims and the caretakers both. They all paid a price for a secret that shouldn't have existed. They stood in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Then they walked back down the mountain together, former enemies united by shared regret and hard-won understanding. That evening at the Foundation's office, Marcus received an email that made him sit back hard in his chair. It was from a geologist working for the U.S. Geological Survey. She'd been studying seismic data from various regions and had noticed anomalous readings that suggested large underground structures in unexpected locations. Several matched known Continental Defense Network sites, but there were others, dozens of others, sites that hadn't been disclosed during the investigations. The email continued. I don't know if these are additional network facilities or something else entirely, but the data is clear. There are more secrets buried out there. More places like Site Tombstone waiting to be found. I thought you should know. Marcus stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he forwarded the email to Tommy with a simple message. It's not over. Tommy's response came back immediately. Did we really think it would be? Marcus smiled despite himself. No, they hadn't. Institutions like the Continental Defense Network didn't die easily. They adapted, evolved, went deeper underground. The letter he'd received a year ago had hinted as much. But that didn't mean the fight was pointless. Every exposure mattered. Every truth revealed made the next revelation easier. Every person who chose transparency over secrecy chipped away at the edifice of institutional deception. He opened a new document and began drafting a plan. They'd investigate the anomalous readings. Carefully, legally, with proper authorization this time. They'd work with the geologist, coordinate with journalists, prepare for whatever they found. If there were more sites, they'd expose them. If there were more victims, they'd seek justice for them. The mission Chen had started wasn't finished. Maybe it never would be. But Marcus was okay with that. Some fights didn't end. They just changed form. And some secrets were too dangerous to stay buried, no matter how deep they were hidden. Emma came into the office, backpack over her shoulder, ready to head home. She saw the expression on her father's face and paused. What's wrong? Marcus looked at his daughter, thought about the life she'd have if he pursued this. More investigations, more threats, more time in the spotlight. He could walk away, focus on the Foundation's existing work. Let someone else chase these new leads. Let the buried stay buried. But he thought about Chen, too. About an old man who'd spent 56 years maintaining a lie and then chose truth at the very end. about the courage it took to break from systems that had defined your whole life, about the responsibility that came with knowing things others didn't. Nothing's wrong, baby. He closed his laptop. Just work stuff. We'll handle it. Ready to go home? She nodded, but her eyes were skeptical. She was too smart to be fooled easily. You're going to do something dangerous again, aren't you? Marcus stood and put his arm around her shoulders. Maybe. Eventually. But not today. Today we're going home, ordering pizza, and watching whatever movie you want. The dangerous stuff can wait until tomorrow. They walked out together into the West Virginia evening. The Foundation's office was modest, a converted storefront in downtown Framingham, but it was theirs, built on truth, dedicated to protecting those who spoke it. The work would continue. New secrets would surface. New whistleblowers would need help. New site's tombstone would be found. But for tonight, Marcus was just a father taking his daughter home. Tomorrow, he'd be a hunter again, tracking secrets through the forest of institutional deception. Tonight, though, he chose peace. Behind them, on his desk, the geologist's email waited. Coordinates to underground anomalies. Maps showing possible facility locations. Evidence that the Continental Defense Network might have been larger than anyone had realized. The truth was still out there, buried but not gone. And Marcus Webb, the hunter who'd stumbled onto one secret and exposed it to the world, would find it. Eventually. Because that's what he did now. That's who Chen's sacrifice had made him. A man who couldn't look away from difficult truths. A man who'd learned that sometimes the most patriotic thing you could do was expose your country's secrets. As he drove home with Emma chattering about her day, Marcus thought about the tank they'd found in the forest. How its tracks had led somewhere secret. How following them had changed everything. He wondered sometimes what would have happened if they'd turned back. If they'd let the wounded deer go and never climbed Copperhead Ridge. Their lives would be simpler, safer, more comfortable. But Chen would have died alone in that mountain. The Continental Defense Network would still be operating in shadow. Dozens of murder victims would remain unexplained accidents. And somewhere, right now, another hunter would have stumbled onto another secret, would have faced the same impossible choice. Look away, or look deeper. Marcus was glad they'd looked deeper. Glad they'd found the truth even though it had cost them everything comfortable about their old lives. Because some truths were worth the cost. Some secrets needed exposing no matter who tried to keep them buried. The tank in the forest had led to a mountain facility. The facility had led to a national conspiracy. The conspiracy had led to justice, incomplete and imperfect, but justice nonetheless. And now it seemed it would lead somewhere else. To more tunnels, more secrets, more hidden history waiting to be revealed. Marcus didn't know where this new path would take him. Didn't know what he'd find when he started investigating those seismic anomalies, but he'd follow it. Because that's what hunters did. They followed the trail wherever it led, even when it led to places that were never supposed to be found. Especially then.